Welcome to the Radical Responsibility Revolution podcast. This is where we are transforming lives, inspiring you to reclaim your health, your wealth, and the power of your mind. Here we share actionable insights, inviting you to turn inwards and design your life of purpose and abundance. Welcome back to another episode of Radical Responsibility Revolution. And today's guest is one of those women who makes you feel safer just by the way she speaks. And she really does. She understands that beauty is not decoration, it's medicine. That creativity doesn't bloom under pressure, it blooms in safety. And that becoming who you truly are often happens later than you were promised and far more powerfully than you ever imagined. Marcy Barbaro is a writer, guide, and co creator of transformational spaces where stories are not just written, they are reclaimed. Oh, who doesn't need to do that? Her journey is one of late blooming, deep rewiring, radical self honesty, and choosing ease over endurance. Praise God. This is a conversation about boundaries as self respect, creativity as survival, and what happens when a woman finally stops asking for permission. My golly gosh. If you've ever felt like your real life started after everyone told you it should have ended, this episode is for you. And Marcy, I'm so excited to have you. And I always ask in the beginning a question about what are you the most proud of the impact that you are now bringing to the world?
Oh gosh, you know what? It's got to be loving myself and giving other people permission to put their own selves first.
Yeah.
Like, what a space we operate from when we make sure we're rested, we're nourished, we're having fun, we're being playful, we're feeding our soul instead of making sure that everybody else is comfortable.
Yeah. It's incredible how many women I have on and I've interviewed that have that same message, which seems so simple. And we've relegated it to trite, the whole face mask coming down on the airplane, but it is the essence of us being available, bioavailable for everybody else. So I find that so lovely. And I want to bring attention to your background because that's the first thing that struck me.
Thank
And
you.
I want to speak about that just for a second before we get into your story. You use the word tonic, that beauty around you is like a tonic. So I want you to
Yes.
expand on that of how that's so important for us to nourish ourselves because it begins just with these simple little things.
Oh gosh, Debbie, I am so passionate. The man or woman, doesn't matter where you are in life, you must gaze on beauty every day. And I'm not saying like find yourself a hot chick to look at. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that when we look at something beautiful, a flower, a piece of furniture, architecture, nature. There are chemicals that, are released in our bodies. So just by looking at things that are beautiful, we actually change our energy. We change how we are. Before I talk about my background, which was created by my good friend Courtney Juno, who's a female Finnish carpenter, and she put that 100-year-old barn board up on the wall in my back on my backdrop. I discovered this when I was a stay-home mom of three children. Gave birth to my daughter, and before she was even two, I'd given birth to twin boys. So I had three kids under the age of two, and my ex-husband, my then husband, was out of the house 12 hours a day, and I was caring for these humans. And I used to go to the local library and I would bring home like as many coffee table books as I could carry. Architecture, interior design, flowers, gardens, British gardens, painting, decor, because I was changing diapers, rocking babies to sleep, cleaning up messes, all day long. My whole environment was being of service to these three humans who I love.
Mhm.
But I was a little bit creativity sort of bankrupt at the time.
Yeah.
And when the babies were sleeping or when they were playing on the floor, they were in their exercise or wherever they were, I would open these books and look at beautiful images. And they were a tonic. They reminded me that I'm not just a mother, I'm a creative being. And wow, the world is so vast. And so these giant coffee table books with their full color images, this was before, YouTube. This was before all that stuff when you could look at a video. And instead, I dove in to create the chemical change that I needed to be happy in my circumstances. And I believe it made me a better mother, a more patient mother.
Yeah. That's incredible. That's such great wisdom for anybody that's listening, even in 2026, that you spent that energy and it was free to go to the library and it's free to go on YouTube. Yet we're on there doom scrolling so much
Yep.
of the time when those tools are so accessible to bring that beauty into our lives. I want you to really expand on this idea of changing our chemistry. I cannot talk about this enough that it isn't about the mindset. It's about the chemistry that's downloaded in this physical body that actually creates our experience. When you say chemistry, I want the audience to hear it from you.
Well, we will be releasing oxytocin when we
Mhm.
are connected with a human being. One of the things that we talk a lot about now in this space is cortisol and what cortisol does and adrenaline. I was really fortunate to have trained to be a yoga and meditation teacher. And I did that work for 12 years. And at that time, I learned about fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and how our breath can change our experience. Deep breathing, slowing your breathing, speeding your breathing up. But I also learned about the sister science to yoga, which is Ayurveda. And in the world of Ayurveda, I'm oversimplifying here. This is an ancient Indian practice or Hindu practice. We believe that everything is food, right? So, what you look at, the music you listen to. So, I don't watch violent movies. I don't watch movies with sexual abuse. I don't read books that are just deep dives into trauma
Yeah.
because I really want to protect my energy, what goes into my cells. The people you spend time with are going to change the chemistry of your body, right? So be careful what you're feeding yourself. If you're listening to music that is negative and it's the end of the world and it's full of hate, guess what? You're going to clutch the steering wheel more tightly when you're driving and have less patience, right? So this is one of the things. And the other thing about the cortisol and women, particularly as nurturers and as caregivers, we can fill a day, man. We can fill those 24 little blocks like no other.
Yeah.
And at this point in my life, I have decided I will never rush again. I will never hurry again.
Yeah.
Hurry is fear. If you don't want to be late, start a little
Yeah.
earlier,
Yeah.
right? But stop hurrying because
Yeah.
that will increase your cortisol production, which will, then create a fear response in you sometimes. And it's hard to shut that tap off once it starts running.
Yeah. These are simple ideas, yet so overlooked. And the whole notion that everything is food in our life, or medicine, if you will, it comes from my
Yes.
ayahuasca experiences, but everything is medicine for us. And if we're taking medicine that's toxic, like the pharmaceutical companies are giving us, which is that fear, which is that hurry, which is that watching things that are not going to support our beingness, it's so key and critical. What's your best wisdom for somebody? What's the most important thing out of all of those that a woman could start or a man could start right now today to shift to allow that food to be more nourishing in their life?
Oh gosh, I think it's different for everyone, but I'm
Yeah.
going to say, could you pay attention? Pay attention to
Hmm.
how you feel. So pay
Yeah.
attention how you feel in a certain environment. Pay attention. So let's say you love to work out, but you go to a gym with a group fitness class that is kind of competitive. So you love to work out. Exercising is not the problem. But you've gone to a new gym and, the women are really lifting maybe a little heavier than they should. The music is really loud and abrasive, and you feel inferior because, you like to work out, but this is a little hardcore for you. Pay attention to that. That's not in alignment with you. There's nothing wrong with you. That's just not in alignment, right? So let's pay attention when you're eating a certain food. How do you feel after? Do you feel sluggish? Do you feel a little sad or depressed after you eat something? Pay attention to that. So I really I really think the starting point for everybody, because we're all individuals, and what might work for me, drinking water. I don't drink a lot of alcohol. I don't do any 420. I have things that work for me, but they might not be what works for you. But do you know who knows what works for you? Nobody but you. Like, get to work on it. Start paying attention. If it's a journal. If you want to make notes, put little ticks on your counter on a piece of paper when you notice something coming up for you, and start to analyze what nourishes you and what depletes you.
Yeah. Awareness is the key. And if we are aware, we will listen to this beautiful thing called our body, and she always knows. She always
Yeah.
knows, which is so
Yes.
beautiful. We have a built-in guidance system that we completely ignore for the most part. I love the idea that don't hurry, because time is not a renewable resource.
Yes.
There are so many things that are renewable out there. Even petro is renewable because we're all going to die at some point and make more of it. But the fact is time is not a renewable resource.
Yeah.
So speak to how you have worked with your clients about time. We have lost all connection to it by being in that hurry, by being in that hustle, by driving ourselves into burnout. And so, what are some of the pathways that you have seen your clients take through your coaching? They have found their way to a new place in their way that they look at time.
I love that. You know what? I think the thing is if we're hurried or we're worried about time, or we have a preconceived notion of what we should achieve in a certain time block. So a lot of my clients are writing a memoir, their life story, a thought leadership book, and they have plans, and we need plans, and that's driven by the ego. And if we didn't have an ego, we wouldn't get out of bed. So there's no shame in that. But what ends up happening is we tighten, right? We really tighten, we really constrict when we have an agenda. Whereas if we could let go and trust that everything is going to come out in good time, the answers are already in there. There are things going on in your subconscious that is subconscious. You don't need to, in the conscious mind, you're not aware of it at the moment. There are things always happening. So just relax and let go. And so we always respect that each writer has their own process. And they're always apologizing to us. Sorry, I didn't get as much done. Sorry, I didn't get to the edit. Sorry, I didn't get that chapter done. We said,
Yeah.
well, if it wasn't done, it wasn't ready to be written yet. But in the meantime, while you're vacuuming, while you're driving somewhere, while you're preparing dinner, you may find that a chapter writes itself, right? So just be open to that possibility. I want to expand on one other thing about time. It was Gay Hendricks in his book, The Big Leap, who kind of explained the difference between Einstein time and Newtonian time. Now, do you mind if I go into this just a little bit?
No, I got the book right here. I can hold it up.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh,
I
I
have,
love it. Well, that book really changed my thinking. So
yeah.
Newtonian time is that we have a clock and we have 24 hours and we got to pack it in and we have a schedule and da 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 da. And 200 years after Newton, Einstein came along, and everything with him is relative. And he's like, we have as much time or as little time as we create. And here's an example. I was working as a freelance writer and editor for a magazine when I had 3 preschoolers at home with me. And my kids would have quiet time in the room for an hour every day. I'd get on my laptop. And up there, they could, read books, have puzzles, nap. They could do whatever they wanted to do. What they couldn't do was disturb mommy. So one day, so they're yelling, Mom, I need you. Mom, I need a snack. Mom, I need this. No, you don't. No, you don't. Mom, will you come play? No, I don't have time. I don't have time. I'm on a deadline. This is 1 hour of the day. I get this done. So I don't have time. Anytime they come to me at my desk, I say, back to your room. I don't have. And then one day, my son Brando is sliding around on the hardwood floors in his bedroom in his socks. And doesn't he smash his face off of the very hard corner of his dresser?
Mm.
And there is so much blood, Debbie. And now my three kids are screaming, scream, Mom, Mom, Brando's been hurt. You got to get up here. And at that moment, did I say I don't have time? I had time, right? So we always, so this is how Einstein time was expressed to me. The time is always going to be malleable for the thing that's important. People always say, I don't have enough money and I don't have
Yep.
enough time. And I'm going to say that's a lie. That is a lie that you have created.
Yep.
And I'm going to say you always have time for everything that's most important, and you always have the money for what is most important. And once you accept that in yourself, then you say, how am I spending my time? Why don't I have time for the thing that is so important to me?
Mhm.
What, and this is where, I love the radical responsibility in your podcast is we have to become radically responsible to ourselves about how we're
Yeah.
using our time.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I teach that when we say I don't have enough money or I don't have enough time, we're right. Number one, we've made a declaration. We put an order into the universe that says, you're right. Yes, here you go. And it's so beautiful because I've used that similar example with money that if somebody says, I don't have it, but if you had these same kids that you're talking about, and they said the only way that that child is going to be healed is you have to come up with X amount of dollars, fill in the blank, you will find a way to get it. But
Yeah.
we aren't motivated that way in our lives. We get in these little crazy comfort zones. I love that analogy. It is so beautiful. So let's talk about how you got to where you are today because you're helping writers. You are such a Sherpa for them because writing a book is like climbing Everest. So I want you to talk about how you got there and then what exactly are you doing to help everyday people writing their stories?
Oh gosh. Well, you know what? I started out studying journalism. And because I always knew I wanted to write, but I wasn't a hard news gal. So when I was in journalism school, I was terrified because I didn't know politics. I didn't know what was happening on the world stage. I just knew I wanted to write. So after 2 years
Hmm.
in that program, I transferred to university and finished up my degree in honors literature. And if you do a literature degree, for all you English majors out there, you know that you read probably 20 books a class, right? Each course has probably got 20 novels or major works of literature on the reading list. And so I became extremely well read. And neither one of my parents even had a high school education. But in the classics, I found wisdom, I found morality, I found life lessons. I was so excited. And I could also now analytically compare different types of writing and pull themes out and find the voice and da 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 da. And then I got really busy. I worked for as a writer and editor for small publications for a while. And then I had my kids. And since I was sleep deprived, I stopped writing. I wrote a little bit of poetry here and there. I always read. And I always read to my children. So books are my friends. Anyways, fast forward, did some yoga teaching, all that, loved it. Kids grew up and I was teaching yoga. I had a yoga studio in my home. I was teaching at a major yoga school. I was the education coordinator of a yoga teacher training program. And then the pandemic hit and it was like, oh, what should I do now? I knew I didn't want to teach yoga on a screen with my students, 1 inch by 2 inches on my screen. I didn't feel like that was safe. I wasn't passionate about it. And someone very dear to me said, well, it's probably time that you write your book. And I was like, what book? And they're like, the book that you've always wanted to write. And so I did
Book.
sit down at that time to write my book, which is called Beautiful Humans. There's Nothing Wrong with You. And it was hard. It was boring. It was isolating. Despite being a lifelong writer, I was like, this is hard work. I didn't have an editor providing feedback. It was like, it was
Mhm.
writing in a vacuum. And
Yeah.
at that time, I also invested a lot of money into mindset training. It was all online courses. And in that course, I met my now business partner, Alex Morin. And I recognized him as a fellow writer. And I said to him, like, hey, little secret here. I'm trying to write a book and it's really, really hard. And he helped me. He edited it with me. But I said to him, would you start a company with me to help people write books? Because if I'm a lifelong writer and a lifelong reader, and I have an English degree and journalism training, and I can't write a book, how is an everyday person who doesn't have this training going to write a book?
Right.
And to his credit, Alex didn't hesitate. And since that time, that's what we've been doing, is working with writers and creating a safe space and pulling that story out of them, getting it on the page. And then we do the developmental editing, which is, structure, story arc, themes, character development, setting, plot, all that stuff. And hey, it's working.
That's incredible to ask somebody that question and them to say yes. That really is divine inspiration and divine input. So, when you decided to do that and you start this company, were you looking for people that wanted to write their autobiography story or fiction?
You know what? It was pretty much from the get-go, memoir, thought leadership. And because I'd been a yoga teacher for so many years, I had quite a large following on Facebook and Instagram. And Alex and I put together the curriculum. He has a literature degree and is a very accomplished writer himself. And when we put this course together and we advertised it the first time, we had 5 people sign up to write books with us in a month. It was incredible. And we're like, I guess we're doing this. I
Yeah.
guess this is what we're doing now. And it's amazing. Some of those books are behind me, but we're still in touch with those 5 people, and more. And we've just been refining it and getting feedback, finding out what works, what doesn't work. And we're just, we don't even live in the same town. We live a couple hours apart, Alex and I, but we meet every single day and we talk about how to make the experience better for the writer. And we have always maintained that we create in safety. When we feel seen, heard, remembered, loved, now we can create, as opposed to, okay, smarty pants, what you got? That's not our approach at all. Our approach is a heart-based approach.
So that's the one thing that you said that struck me is that you're creating a container of safety for people
Mhm.
that are writing their stories. Because I believe, and I'm sure you do as well, that we all have a story to tell. That is
Yes.
what makes us unique, our unique individualized expression of the one. And so often we all put ourselves in that vacuum that we don't matter for whatever reason that is. So that is that safety component that if we get out of our own way and allow someone to create that container for us, amazing magic begins to happen. So share some of the experiences that you've had. Doesn't need to be their stories per se. You can share that if you want, but that what people have experienced with you and you watch this. What a beautiful thing to watch unravel for somebody when
Yeah.
they move into that place of safety where they can tell their story. Share some of those experiences with us.
Gosh, every writer has transformed as a person. One of our very first writers in the program came to us and said, "Look, I've been in banking for 30 years. All I've done is write point form emails." But he had an incredible story of his mother dying quite young, having a whole bunch of
Mhm.
siblings, being adopted into a horrible situation, and then finding his way out. And wow, some of the storytelling that ended up happening,
Mhm.
there were tears as he was sharing stories with us. And we're like, okay, go and write that now. And his book is powerful and beautiful. We have another writer who's a therapist who really started to knew she had to do an inner child journey. And she had kind of zigzagged all over the country as a young person and never really felt like she had a home. By the time she was 14 years old, her name had been changed legally 3 times in order to protect her identity. And so she was really struggling with matters of identity. And as she came into writing the final chapters of her book, she went back to where she was as a child, geographically, and brought gifts for her younger self. to deliver at this place.
Wow.
Like these, like I can't make this stuff up.
Oh
And
no. No.
it's so beautiful. And she's so changed. We have another writer who wrote a work of fiction because to write the real story was too hard for her. So she added a lot of
Right.
fictional elements, but it was basically her story of growing up with a sibling who required a lot of medical attention and how she felt kind of invisible with this sibling and resentful towards her sibling and her parents, even her grandparents to some degree, and felt that she was not even important. And when she first started working with us, she was angry. She's like, I'm angry, guys. I don't know how to
Yeah.
write this book. And as soon as we said, what if we were to fictionalize it? What if we were put some magical realism elements in the book? Like it couldn't possibly happen. And that gave her license to create characters, to make stuff up. It was still her story.
Right.
But because she got to add all the fiction, she got everything out and work through these emotions. And it's a beautiful book. And she said, my relationships with my sibling and with my parents are forever changed. The anger is gone. I wrote it out,
Hmm.
you
It is
know?
so it's amazing how cathartic writing a book is, writing your story. I heard a speaker recently, she was a LinkedIn person, and the conversation was about stories. Stories are so important in speaking and any area of our life. People understand stories that we have got this notion as humans that you can't tell a personal story, especially if you're in business, because we have separated and compartmentalized those aspects of our life. So just hearing these stories that you're sharing, these people may have jobs, but that's not their identity. The
Mm-hmm.
truth of their humanness is in those stories. So I want you to actually right now talk about your own story. How did you even begin to think that yoga was your path? Because that's not everybody's path. And you didn't just take yoga, you became an instructor. So where is the trajectory of who you are as not your business, but who are you as this human impactor?
Oh, wow. That is such a big question. You know what? I started out in, someone once said to me, a therapist once said, pain is a great motivator. And I had some early pain. There was some chaos in my home growing up that made me feel unsafe. I wasn't sure sometimes if I was going to be loved or if I was going to be criticized. But then this is going to sound like a really silly thing. But what happened to me was my body started to develop physically, and I grew these enormous breasts. And
Mm,
at, 14, 15 years old, I had such large breasts, and it brought so much attention to me and sexual attention. I was all of a sudden a sexualized being from other people's perspectives. And I was still the kid who wanted to, do skits with my best friends in the backyard and cartwheels and play baseball and ride my bike. And all of a sudden, grown men were hitting on me. People were speaking to my breasts, and I stopped moving. I packed on a lot of weight because
mhm.
I was just so overwhelmed with this change in my body. It was confusing. And then when I became fat, now I became unattractive. And so I went from kind of being this smart, fun, athletic, outdoorsy girl to now you're kind of a fat girl that nobody really wants to pay a lot of attention to. And that was very confusing to me because I was like, same person, still here, still funny, still smart, still curious. Um, but that was very difficult. And so then a good portion of my life became about how can I make myself acceptable again? Right.
Mm,
And then, as you can imagine, Debbie, without going into a whole lot of detail, I made myself sexually available in situations when I shouldn't have been, looking
yeah.
for acceptance. I became a people pleaser. When you tie that in with some of the chaotic upbringing that I had, this became a recipe for self abandonment.
Yeah.
And that was 100% what I did. I abandoned myself. I forgot. I got lost. I have a line in my book that says something like, that happy, confident girl was lost in the fat folds,
Yeah.
and so it's not the most traumatic thing in the world to put on weight, but this combination of things really derailed me. So I had to start to fight my way back. And, I was always working out, trying to work out, lose the weight, eat right, and did every single diet going. And one day I was at the community center. I had just come out of a step class. I couldn't get my feet moving fast enough. I couldn't keep up. I felt sloppy and slow. And I was walking by this room where the lights were out and everybody was laying on their yoga mat with a blanket on top of them. And I said to my friend, "What's that?" And they're
Mm.
like, "That's yoga." And I instinctively knew that I had been running on fear. Like I had been running
Yeah.
on fear, not good enough, not good enough, not good enough, got to fix this, got to fix that. And I knew that if I could just slow down and find my breath, that I could heal.
Mhm.
And so I started to go to yoga and I loved it so much. The slow
Mhm.
pace, the breathing exercises, the shavasana, that I wanted to become an instructor. And I was honestly the most gentle, kind instructor I could be because I knew from my own experience that people were there because they really needed to be,
Mhm.
you know?
I'm I'm in tears over that story because I relate to it so much that I I was heavy. I mean I was thought I was the fat girl still to this day in an effort to keep sexuality away from myself. And so I know if you just told that story and I've had that experience, that there are so many women that are listening to this that can relate to that, that we do all of these things to keep ourselves safe because that's what you were doing once again. And then now come fast forward, you've created this space of safety for people to tell their stories in this, like literally this is making me cry because it was so vulnerable and so open the way you just told that story, that if somebody doesn't relate to that, then they are, I don't know what they are. You are a walking breathing example of how stories impact all of us because we can relate to the feelings. That's all we're
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. And yeah, and I just want to speak. Do you mind if I speak a little bit on that
no,
self-abandonment piece? You
sure.
know, I think our generation of women, I know it's very different because I have a daughter and she takes no prisoners. But in our generation, as soon as my hair was reaching my shoulders, I was being asked, "Who's your boyfriend? Which one's your boyfriend? Do you have a boyfriend?" And so we were always seen through the lens of men wanting us, men approving of us, men selecting us, wanting to be chosen, right?
Mhm.
And that was the lens that I was raised in. And of course, that gets into the sexual realm too, where you
Yeah,
confuse that and you think that being wanted sexually is the same as being wanted and being loved, right? And it's very confusing. But that was the expectation, is that in
mhm,
order to have worth, to have
yeah,
value, you must be chosen by a man. And if you're not chosen, maybe there's something wrong with you. If you're a single woman, what's wrong with you? And then to be at this place now and be like, no, I love me. I approve of me. I choose me.
yeah,
And I think that's why you say so many women can relate, because I think that self-abandonment piece comes from the needing to please, the needing to
yeah.
be chosen.
Yeah. Yes, I completely understand that. And I married myself last June on a ceremony on Playa del Carmen. And those were in my vows. I wrote my vows that I will no longer abandon myself because that's
Mm.
what we do as women. We abandon ourselves. So your story is hitting home with me, and I know that it's hitting home with so many people that are listening to this. So tell us how somebody that's thinking of, now that you've piqued their desire to tell their story, how do they work with you?
You know what? The easiest way to work with us is to join our Create in Community program, which is 200 bucks Canadian a month. And you come on two group calls a month, a Tuesday night call, which is teaching about writing, some live writing exercises. And then on our Thursday noon calls, one of the writers in our group will read from their book. They'll read a chapter, and their peers, as well as Alex and I, your coaches, will give feedback. You're going to write in your own time, but we're shifting the identity from that of maybe a non-writer to a writer, because twice a week you got to show up to your writing group. You're a writer, you're an author, and you're committed to your manuscript. So that's a really accessible, low price point for getting in. But if you are really passionate, you know, painters got to paint, writers got to write. Like if you're really feel compelled and convicted to write your story, you just go to our website, workingwritersco.com, and book a private call with me and Alex. And let's just brainstorm. Let's just talk about what you got. And if you decide that you want to sign up for our cover to cover program, which is working with us for 6 months, and we fully edit your manuscript, which is an unpublished book, your book, we help you with your book, then we can do that. And that involves workshopping ideas, developing characters, coming up with some issues in the structure of the book and how the story is going to go together, making sure that we have a story arc. It's all that. It's so much. And that's, in those weekly 30-minute meetings with me and Alex where you change. You change because you may have come to your story maybe feeling a little broken or maybe feeling a little angry or something. And during that 6-month period of working with your two coaches, some healing happens. I'm not saying we heal
Yeah.
you, you heal you.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the key is that no coaches are healing us. We are just the conduits. We are the guides, the Sherpas, if you will, to allow
Yeah.
that healing to happen. So I like to talk about 2026 because it's the number one year in numerology. We are in this brand new newness. Lots of things are birthing. We've come through that ninth year of chaos, and some people still think there is a little. I think just look towards the magic. So, for you and what you are doing with your clients and how you are serving people, what is the best wisdom that you can give this audience for 2026, this magical year, as that's the way I'm calling it?
I love that. Thank you for reminding us. I'm going to say, ask yourself how much you trust and how much control you can let go of. Because when we are clenching and clinging, we're really not letting the magic happen. And this has been a huge part of the end of my 2025 journey was to trust that not everything is up to me, that things that are happening, even difficult things that are happening, are meant to be there for me. And so stop trying to grip so tightly and just, challenge yourself. Do I believe that I have to be in control of everything every minute? Or can I cultivate a sense of trust? And I think if you can get really real with yourself around that, notice your habits, your mindset, your practices, and how much of this can I release? That's where the change is going to come.
Yeah. That is just sage wisdom and a tonic on top of everything else to just let go of the grip.
Oh,
All
Debbie,
of
you're the
your
best.
all of your information will be in the show notes, so it'll be easy for someone to click and find you. And I'm so thrilled. What a beautiful experience to share your wisdom and especially your stories, because those truly are what make us in this world, our stories. So thank you so much for being my guest today.
An absolute pleasure, Debbie, and sending love and light to you and all your listeners.